Hello and welcome to the Flex. It's Matt St. Jean here with Joe Howie, as always, to bring you a little Friars coverage of the most anticipated Providence game of the season so far. Just a reminder, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. If you're looking to get a ticket to this game Wednesday night, use that code. If you're looking for last second seats there. Also, a reminder: this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site house-enterprise.com for more info. Joe, Happy New Year here. We're going to do this show. I know there's a lot going on in the world of sports right now. It can be a little bit hard to focus on college basketball at the moment, but I will take this as a little bit of an escape from other things. And we're going to have a big game Wednesday night. And
Yeah.
the Friars had a big game to ring in the new year, too.
Yep. Definitely a lot going on. So, count your blessings, keep your loved ones close. But Happy New Year, everybody. Let's. I'm excited. This was we're coming off a trip to the Midwest where you could have easily split those games, but you win both comfortably. That DePaul game was a little funky. Some weird fouls and some weird dynamics in that one, but a win is a win is a win. And on a night when you played pretty sloppy, you won by 15. So you take that, you stick it in your back pocket, and you're coming home to what will likely be a sold out Amica Mutual Pavilion to host the number 4 team in the country. Ed Cooley's calling them the best team in the country. So we're hosting one of the best teams in college basketball in the Connecticut Huskies for the first rivalry matchup in this building since UConn has rejoined the Big East.
Yeah, this should be a good one. You talk about that trip to the Midwest. Looking back, I think the Friars go out there and they were in position to be in position, if you will.
Yeah.
They were. That was kind of the ramp up of, all right, here's 2 games that aren't not big games, but the games you can't lose.
Yeah.
These are ones you have to bring your A game, and those are the kind of games that if you're not a good team, those will trip you up. And they didn't. The Friars controlled both of them, and now I'd say they are in position to be ranked. You win this game over number 4 UConn, you should get into the AP poll. The Friars received votes this week. They received votes the week before. You win this and you don't lose to St. John's, you're going to be ranked next week.
Matt, you set me up perfectly, and I know you did it because I told you this stat before the game. At this point in time on the schedule last year, Providence was receiving votes before a ranked road win at UConn. The following Monday, they found themselves in the AP top 25. This is a very, very similar position for the Friars right now. Receiving votes, some quality wins on the resume, and you have a date with a ranked UConn. This time, you're at home, though. That's the kicker.
Yeah. It's nice to be back in the building there too after some road games. We're going to get into the analysis of this in a moment, but I do just want to point out one thing that we had noticed, or I had noticed as we were gearing up for this, pulling up the game notes. Last year, the Friars in their conference home opener broke out the white throwbacks, the yellow lettering and the black stripes there. And if you go to the game notes for this one, they're using a picture from that game with that uniform. This is the home conference opener. I wouldn't be shocked to see them. Oh, sorry, this is not the home conference opener. That was the Marquette game. Excuse me. But the first big home game in conference play, I wouldn't be. You can't even say that because that was a ranked game. It's a rivalry game. I would not be shocked to see the throwbacks get brought out for this one.
I would not be shocked either. Matt, for everyone else's context, Matt and I had a 15-minute side conversation in preparation, just talking about Big East uniforms. And we were saying, I personally like the throwback homes with the yellow and the black trim. I don't think that they're ones that they wear consistently, but I do like those jerseys, so I wouldn't hate to see those brought out. But yeah, I mean, this game has a lot of build up to it right now. We're speculating what jerseys they're going to wear. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, which by the way, I did create myself a nice little Big East jersey tracker now, so I can break down each team's record where each jersey see when they wear that. So that's a fun little side project. But Before we get into the Providence UConn game, any thoughts on that DePaul one? Anything that we didn't kind of already talk about going into it, and anything new about the team?
No, I mean, I think that's the type of game we expected. It could have gone either way, but DePaul is DePaul, and the Friars started they started the new calendar year the same way they did last year with a double-digit victory at Wintrust. Part of me, there was a lot of back and forth with the chippiness and the technical fouls. You got to think that this is a DePaul team that right now is really frustrated. Tony Stubblefield isn't necessarily a bad coach, but you're coaching a program that has not been good. That's just flat out simple. They have not been good. And this is a Providence team that's had its way with DePaul the past 2 seasons. So if I'm a player on DePaul, of course I'm getting frustrated. And, we know Ed Croswell and Jared Bynum to be these chippy, emotional players. So, some of it might have been in retaliation. Some of it might have been, instigation. Nonetheless, I wasn't surprised by the chippiness of this game, especially given the most recent matchup between Providence and DePaul. DePaul held a double-figure lead at the Dunkin' Donuts Center last year, and Providence came back and took it. So this is a DePaul team that returns players from that team, returns the coach. I'm sure they wanted a slice of revenge, and it stinks to be at home and to get your teeth kicked in.
Yeah, and the Friars, I think they could have run away with that and won by more.
I think so too.
Played a better second half, but I mean I think they played a pair of dominant first halves last week, and sometimes if you're that dominant in the first half, most of the time you're gonna coast to a victory regardless of what happens the rest of the game. So I wasn't too concerned. I was a little bit shocked to see Devin Carter not get the Big East Player of the Week nod. I will say that.
I was too. Who actually did get it? I haven't checked.
It was Jack Nungy. He had a pair of really good games too. He played through, I believe, a stomach bug or food poisoning or something when Xavier beat UConn. So I get it, but he's not even the Xavier player I would have picked.
We just got a message in the chat. Under over tall boys tomorrow between the two of you. 11.5. I'm pounding that over.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately going to be watching this one from home. I'm
pounding
cannot get myself up to but I will be heading to the grocery store after we record this. I was planning on picking up beers, so I will supplement whatever it is that you're doing in person there, Joe.
Yeah, I'll send you a counter. I'm gonna I said this to my uncle Kevin before the weekend, and I said, this is the first time that I have seen Dan Hurley coach UConn in person, and I hated playing him at the dunk when he was at URI. So I'm going to need like an elephant tranquilizer before the game to sedate me, because I'm going to have some select words from Mr. Hurley.
We got to put that on a t-shirt. Going to need an elephant tranquilizer. Dan Hurley, we were talking about technical fouls in the Providence DePaul one. He had a technical for UConn late in their loss at Xavier.
Yep.
Which was, I don't know, it was a pretty big turning point in that game late. I think how he handles himself in this one, he's going to be under a microscope, that's for sure.
I wouldn't say that necessarily lost UConn the game, but it certainly shifted the momentum that was already building for Xavier. Like, Xavier had gone on a little run, and that technical foul kind of just pushed them even further. We saw the same thing happened to Dan Hurley against Villanova at home last season when UConn upset Villanova. That, again, this is twice now where the moment has proven to be a little bit too much for Hurley, and he gets himself teed up. I think it's a little bit different when you're at home and you can kind of get the crowd to play into it, get your players to feed into it and all that. It's very different in a 1 or 2 possession ball game on the road with 3 minutes left, or you're giving the other team free points. He has to be really, really careful on Wednesday night, because this is going to be an environment that is going to be hostile from the tip of the basketball. It's an environment of fans that did not like him when he was the URI coach, and now he has transferred over to Providence's Big East rival. He has to be extremely careful of what he does, because if the crowd gets into it and he gets overly emotional, you could see another technical foul on Dan Hurley.
Yeah. And honestly, for that reason alone, I kind of expect that it won't happen.
Yeah.
because
It's so likely to happen.
And Dan Hurley's a smart enough guy. Like he's had his issues controlling himself for sure, but he isn't this bad. But if it happens again, then we need to have a serious conversation about his ability to lead this team. Because if you do that if you blow a gasket in back-to-back road games, get yourself kicked out of a game at the end of last season, that's a lot in a very short amount of time there. And he'll probably be all right. It's a UConn team that'll be looking to bounce back. They dropped to number 4 in the polls. I still don't as far as I'm concerned, this team should be number 1 in the polls. I don't even care about the loss to Xavier. Like,
I mean, Ed Cooley said it best in the post-game press conference after that DePaul game when asked about the Xavier UConn game. He said that's one of the best college basketball games, if not the best one to this point of the 2022-2023 college basketball season. Like, that, I don't think UConn deserved to drop that much after that loss because Xavier is a really good team. So,
and Kevin Sweeney wrote an article too today for Sports Illustrated, his column I was reading, talking about the AP poll. And his point was basically like the only reason UConn dropped is because they lost more recently than the other teams they're around. But they still have a better resume than all of them. And it's them and Houston next to one another at the top of the computers right now. And the only team that Houston has lost to is Alabama, and UConn beat them by 15 on a neutral site.
Yeah.
So if you look at resumes here, it's hard to think anybody but UConn should be the number 1 team in the country. In my eyes, they'd be a number 1 seed if the tournament started today.
Right. Yeah. I'm in agreement.
Yeah. So the last time a team, let's say it was a projected number 1 seed, the team that ended up as a number 1 seed came into Providence. You know?
Was this the Xavier game in 2018 or the Villanova game in 2018?
Both.
Yeah, okay.
Both that season.
I didn't know which one to pick.
Yeah, and the Friars won both of those. And that Xavier one was part of back-to-back losses around this time of year for that Xavier team.
I heard you bring this up on the Road to the Garden podcast, so I was expecting you were going to bring that stat into this. I mean, this is one of the weird things about scheduling in the Big East is sometimes, you find these trends, and here we are where you have a projected number 1 seed that is on a back-to-back road trip to 2 hostile environments. So listen, I think a lot has to happen, and Providence will have to do a lot of things the right way in order to get a win on Wednesday. But I don't think it's as out of the realm of possibility as some people may think.
No, especially not with the way the Friars have been playing, not with the environment in that building, and not with the fact that, quite frankly, UConn has been trending a little bit down over the past couple weeks. They've still been playing good basketball, but not quite at the same level they were playing in the PKI. They played a closer game to Georgetown than people thought. They lost to Xavier. And even that Butler game was, I think, a little bit closer at points than people expected it might be, although they obviously ran away with it. So, yeah, I think it's obviously now we've seen a beatable UConn team. We'll see if they're actually able to do it. I got 2 stats for you here. One, just to mention, the other one I think is going to be the top storyline in this game. The first one, obviously we know Devin Carter's tweet after the TCU game saying they're going to get things right. Since that point, we'll flip the calendar there into December. According to Bart Torvik, Providence is the number 8 team in the country in efficiency, and number 7 is UConn. So when it comes to how these teams have played over the last month and change, they are neck and neck. Obviously, I don't think that takes quality of opponent into account that much. I know Florida Atlantic is like right up in the same area, so it's not gospel, obviously. But I think that is absolutely notable that the computers say this is a very, very, very close game. And the other part, so that's Bart Torvik. We'll go to the other computer here with Mr. Ken Pomeroy himself. According to him, the number 1 player in the conference right now is Adama Sunoco, and the number 2 player in the conference is Bryce Hopkins. It's going to be 1 and 2 going against each other Wednesday night, and it should be a blast.
I really love that pair of stats for a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, I just love that Devin Carter tweets that out, and he's been at the forefront of this Providence surge over the past couple of weeks. Obviously we saw what he just did in the Midwest, but even before that, the defensive prowess, his athleticism. He's been scoring more than expected. You know, he's the locker room guy that this team needed, and even the way he's carried himself on the post game press conferences, he's right now like the outward PR face of the program on and off the court. And I just think that him sending that tweet and then having the handful of games that followed just go hand in hand so perfectly together. And what you said about Sanogo and Hopkins, I think what's interesting too is Sanogo didn't have his best game against Villanova recently. Hopkins didn't have the best trip to the Midwest. So I think both of these two players are due for another one of those breakout games. Obviously, Devin Carter was the story for the Friars in this Midwest trip at Butler and at DePaul. Sanogo had a little bit of a bounce back against Xavier, but hasn't been as dominant as he's been in the past. Same with Hopkins. I think that this is a really interesting matchup, especially because it's two different styles of play, and they likely won't be matched up on one another. So it's going to be fun to see both of them go at it.
I want to start with Bryce Hopkins when we're looking at these matchups. And I think to me, watching the UConn Xavier game this past weekend, what was most shocking is how consistently Xavier was able to get into the post on offense and make stuff work. Zach Fremantle had a double-double. I saw him work Andre Jackson on a number of occasions and made it look easy. Jerome Hunter had 15 points for them. I think this is an area where Bryce Hopkins should be able to thrive. I think he and Andre Jackson going against each other, that'll just be fun to watch with two freak athletes who can play well. I do also think it's interesting, like the Fremantle Andre Jackson thing is Jackson is an athlete and Fremantle is very technically sound and having a great season. They're different players, and they say styles make fights. Well, I think Bryce Hopkins and Andre Jackson in a lot of ways kind of play the same style. They're both freak athletes. Hopkins is bigger. Jackson is a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see how that goes down and how the Friars are able to operate on offense in the paint.
I think we're going to see somewhat of a replica of what happened against Marquette, where Hopkins finds himself at the free throw line a ton. Like you said, Jackson is quicker, but Hopkins is bigger. I think we're going to see a lot of Hopkins driving to the rim and getting a little touchy fouls that are going to wind up being controversial, but the correct call at the end of the day, just because of the size mismatch in terms of girth, not length.
Yeah, and this is a Providence team right now that is 20th in the nation in free throw rate. That's how often they get to the free throw line. And a UConn defense that is 332nd in free throw rate. So UConn fouls a ton. So we obviously know how often the Friars get to the line. UConn's basically, on average, sending their opponent to the line as often as Providence is getting there right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So the Friars should spend a lot of this game at the free throw line if they play it right and the passes are getting in. I think that'll be a key part, is actually getting into that area of the court to make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think a key part of that will be Jared Bynum, who's kind of picked it up as of late. If he can get those entry passes down, I think we'll be good. I just thought of, though, is this better not be one of those matchups where we get to the line a ton and we miss like 13 or 14 free throws, because then I'm going to lose my freaking mind.
Yeah, no, that could be. We're gonna have to see what happens there. You got to make your free throws. In a position like this.
That's going to be an important stat at the end of the day.
Yeah. I will say the Friars have gotten better at the stripe. They aren't great, but they've improved.
They have. They've from game one to now, they've definitely improved at the line. You still see a couple of performances where there's blips and you'll miss 5 or 6 per player, but that's neither here nor there. You got to tighten it up.
Yeah. You look at this UConn defense right now, one that is currently ranked as the number 4 offense in KenPom. Number 4 defense in KenPom. It's been incredibly efficient. There's basically 2 areas where they're at their best. One is defending the 3-point line. And because of that, I do not think we're going to see the Friars take a lot of threes. They don't usually. Xavier only took 13 last game, and they like to shoot it. So there's just no need to play out there. What is interesting is they're a top 10 team at stopping teams from getting offensive rebounds. The Friars are currently the 6th best offensive rebounding team in the country. I think that is probably going to be what determines this game when Providence has the ball.
Yeah, this is a really interesting paint matchup because you have, the projected Big East player of the year in Adama Sanogo, and I'll go as far as saying the projected freshman of the year, and Donovan Clingan, down low for the Huskies. And you've got a workhorse in Ed Croswell, who isn't the biggest or strongest of the bigs in the conference, but he's certainly, he can hold his own down in the paint. I think, Clifton Moore is going to be an X factor for us defensively off the bench. He put together a really solid performance at Butler and was a really good matchup on Manny Bates. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Friars, try to clean the glass against a really solid UConn front court.
Yeah.
Really solid. Sanogo's a big boy. He's a big man.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look at this: Adama Snogo, 6.7 rebounds per game. Andre Jackson, 6.3 rebounds per game. Donovan Clingan, 6.1 rebounds per game. And then Tristan Newton gets into it. He's got 4.4. Caravan, he gets 4 rebounds a game. I think he looked rough on defense at certain points last game. So they got a lot of guys that are going to get into the fray. I will say, if they're trying to put Caravan out there to defend Bryce Hopkins, I think that's going to go very poorly for UConn. I think that's kind of been their weakness, has been their play at the 4 so far. If they have, it's either their play at the 4 being inconsistent, or their guards not always being able to turn it on and score when needed. Those are kind of the 2 flaws on offense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, from a guard standpoint, if UConn can get their backcourt going, I don't know how much I trust Jared Bynum and Noah Locke as the 1 and the 2 to lock them down defensively. I'd expect that Allen Breed's going to log a lot of minutes at the shooting guard spot. But to your point, Matt, about the 4 spot, Fremantle obviously is having a really good bounce back season, but they made him look like an all-star last game defensively. Like he was getting whatever he wanted with ease. And I'd go as far as saying that Bryce Hopkins is, significantly more athletic than Zach Fremantle. So if he's attacking the basket, that's going to be a lot of trouble for this UConn team.
Yeah, he will have to be technically sound. That is for sure, because this is the UConn team that they'll rip the ball away from you. And if you're lazy with your dribble, it's the Friars don't take threes. I imagine Dan Hurley's going to make some adjustments after last week, and I expect them to clog paint better against Providence than they did against Xavier. So you got to be careful with the ball there. I think in some ways this kind of becomes a huge Jared Bynum game, because he has to navigate the offense, and he's really good with the ball right now. He's not turning it over a ton. So just be careful with it. Get it in where it needs to go. Get the entry passes and let everybody else get to work. And if it comes back to you, it comes back to you. Hit the shots when you get them. But
I think the point about Jared Bynum too is the past couple of games, it looks like he's letting the game come to him. And I think because of that, we've seen this resurgence into the consistency of what we saw last season with Bynum. This is going to be a really big test for him, because this is a game where, you're the veteran, you're the leader, you need to take control here, because this could be a resume building, a resume making win for the Friars. And if Jared Bynum is this senior leader, this senior captain, this, I have the reins in my hands guy, it's got to be him. He's got to be the dude. He's got to be Ed Cooley's dude.
Yeah. Oh, he absolutely has to be. When we look at the other end here, when UConn has the ball, they're a very good offense. They don't do a lot poorly. They're not fantastic at any single thing. They're just kind of consistently good. I will say it becomes a lot easier to play offense when your defense gets stops like theirs has. Yeah, you play in the half court a lot less. You can play in transition a lot more, and that helps. But they're a good 3-point shooting team. If that's for the Friars' weakness, I think we've seen them clean it up on the 3-point defense in the last couple of games.
Yeah.
They're going to have to be good there. Although UConn took, I think, 37 3-pointers at Xavier. So if they're going to take that many and miss the way they did, maybe you don't hate it.
I mean, in the final, let's call it 4 minutes of the second half, I don't know the stat, Matt, but
I have it.
They missed how many threes?
8.
Yeah. So
they went 1 for 10 in the final 4 minutes of the game against Xavier, and 8 of the shots were threes, and they didn't make a single one. I think 3 or 4 came in one possession too.
I think that's a good example of the composure in a late game situation when your back is against the wall. Like if you're going to resort to chucking a 3-pointer and not looking for a quality shot, I think, advantage Friars if we're in that situation and UConn is just chucking threes.
Yeah, Andre Jackson took 12 3-pointers and made 4 of them. Like that's, and this is also where I think you have to be locked in if you're Providence. because I don't think UConn's going to play that poorly again. I expect
No.
them to come out motivated and locked in. I don't
Uh,
think they're going to be rattled by the road environment, at least early, maybe late, maybe if things don't go their way, but they're going to get out to a hot start.
uh,
And you have to be able to play with them and match the intensity from the opening tip. You don't want to play from behind.
if I could make a prediction on what I think is going to happen, I think TCU at Providence from last season, where
Mm-hmm.
the road team is going to get out to a somewhat convincing lead, but we're going to have to chip our way back in. I'm not going to make a prediction on the outcome just because there's too much riding on this game emotionally for me to do that. But I think if I was going to, pick a skeleton outline of how I think the game is going to go, I think UConn's going to jump out to an early lead, and Providence is going to have to use the crowd in the building to chip back in.
Yeah, I expect, honestly, if you really want a comparison then on the game, I think you got to talk about the Texas Tech game last year when they came in, because the Friars also had 38 free throw attempts in that one.
Yeah.
And battled back to get some clutch shots late. And that was a Texas Tech team, by the way, that at that time was ranked at number 7 in the country on
What game
KenPom.
did I say?
Are we talking? No, when did you? Are we talking about the same thing? Did I
Did I
just
not?
totally?
Did I not say Texas Tech?
You might.
I don't remember what I said. I either said Texas. Now I'm thinking I said TCU.
You said
'Cause-
TCU.
Did
You
I say
said
TCU?
yeah.
So I meant to say Texas Tech at Providence. That's what I meant to say. See,
We are starting off the new year hot here.
This is what happens. This is what happens. Well, anyway, so we're on the same page here. Texas Tech
Yeah, we
at
are.
Providence.
Yeah, and I fully agree that that's going to have to be the game plan here. I'm very interested to just see what Providence's offense looks like, because I think we've seen the Friars' offense look really good lately, especially for stretches.
Yeah,
and they've also been against defenses that haven't been fantastic. This is the first really really good defense they're going to get since playing well. I want to see I'm just curious. It's because even if the Friars lose this game, I think you learn a lot about where the team is and how it projects going forward, what their answers are.
yeah.
If UConn clogs the paint, do they start chucking threes? Is that what happens? Is that a conscious decision? Are they saying, hey, we're going to trust our 3-pointers against this UConn defense because we know that they're going to overplay to the inside and we think we have the guys that can hit it? Or are they going to panic? And it's going to be a lot of late shot clock stuff where they can't get an offense going.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I trust our 3-point shooting, to be completely honest. I think, this is, like you said, Matt, this is a big test for our offense in the paint. When you look at the front courts of other teams across the conference, this is our first test against one of those, acclaimed powerful front courts.
Mhm.
Seton Hall, Marquette, Butler, DePaul. They're not the teams with the guys that we've been talking about all season.
Mhm.
This is the first test, and of course, it's against one of if not the most difficult front court in the conference. So our offense has run, primarily through the paint. This is going to be a big test for us, especially considering we haven't played Xavier yet, and they have another good front court. We haven't played, Eric Dixon at Villanova yet. We haven't played a lot of the names that have been tossed around a lot by the media, So this is it. This is you're getting a huge welcome here to the front courts of the conference.
Yeah, and I will say I think it's a very good sign that they played against Oso Ighodaro and did well, and they played against Manny Bates and they did well, and those are the guys they get the high end of the middle class of centers in the Big East at the moment, and that's the guys at the top. That's probably 3 of them right now, and that's Sonogo, Dixon, and Kalkbrenner. You might be able to throw Donovan Clingan in that mix too here, depending. So another thing I think that could matter if this game is close, by the way, where the fringes really start to matter, is if you can get good minutes from Clifton Moore or from Rafael Castro, because Donovan Clingan is massive and very good at basketball. And the difference between Sonogo and Croswell down there, they're the same height. Sonogo is better. I'm intrigued to see how they look one-on-one. I think that's a matchup Croswell can hold his own in. I'm not convinced either of these backup centers can hold their own against Clingan.
No, and I said this a few minutes ago. I think Clifton Moore defensively will be an X factor for us, especially if Croswell's having difficulty with Sonogo. we haven't seen Cooley, necessarily fear pulling Croswell in favor of Clifton Moore. Clifton Moore has, provides some nice pressure around the rim. He's long, he's lanky, he's good at blocking shots. The girth here is what is frightening to me, is because Sonogo is a big, thick man.
Yeah.
Donovan Clingan, he's not skinny. He's not a freshman year Kalkbrenner for comparison. He's got some girth to him too. Clifton Moore is a skinnier dude. Rafael Castro, they call him slim, and it's for a reason. These guys don't hold a lot of weight. They have a lot of length, but this is. I wouldn't be surprised to see UConn just start pounding it inside if we can't match defensively.
Yeah, Clingan there at 7'2", 265.
Jeez,
what unbelievable. Yeah. And that's where you mentioned the signs of those guys, and that's where, again, I kind of come back to whatever's going on at the 4, whether that's Caravan or Andre Jackson there. I think the Friars will have an advantage, especially when they have the ball. Caravan has looked rough on defense in stretches here. He reminds me of a younger Noah Horkler. He's the big forward who can shoot the ball, but he's not the toughest guy, and he can get bullied down low. And I think that's one where Bryce Hopkins, like I said before, Bryce Hopkins can take advantage of it. I think he will need to, and that also means Hopkins is going to have to. We'll see how they double Sonogo, and if they decide to double Sonogo here, because doubling Sonogo is going to mean, and it probably happens with Hopkins, it's going to mean taking somebody away from the perimeter. You probably don't want to take away from Caravan though.
No.
So I don't know what defensive assignments they're going to pull out here. I'm intrigued.
I feel like Cooley's going to go man, just straight up man to man. I feel like that's his style when it comes to matchups like this. I feel like he doesn't try to be overly, sneaky or he doesn't try to
pick your spots to be sneaky.
Yeah. You pick your spots to be sneaky. I don't think this is that spot. I think Cooley wants a straight up man to man rock fight.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is one of those too where, like, all right, if it's working, but all of a sudden Sonogo gets 2 or 3 baskets in a row. All right, then you send a double out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. And you do it for a possession, and then you back off, and then you bring it back like 4 possessions later, and you switch it up just to make them a little bit uncomfortable and get them out of rhythm. We'll see how they actually end up handling it, and that's where I think, in some ways, the matchup of the game ends up being Croswell against Sonogo. Not that I don't think any of us expect Croswell to win that matchup, but if he can play well enough that he allows you to match up everywhere else, then you feel a lot better.
Sonogo can score in double figures, but I think if Croswell holds his own, I wouldn't necessarily say that he loses that matchup. Sure, statistically, but I think Croswell is chippy enough to hold his own against Sonogo. I'm not necessarily worried about him. It's if, Croswell messes up on a play or two, he gets pulled, then you put Clifton Moore in there. It's if you start stumbling over the course of 2 players and Sonogo gets going, that's where I get worried. I think you need to let Croswell have a few minutes to just bang around down low and then go from there.
And he's going to have to be really good and disciplined in getting his offensive rebounds too. Yeah. That's where the Friars have thrived on offense this year. I have a stat for you. This is courtesy of Haslametrics, which they do great stuff over there. The Friars are currently in the, what do you call it? They are 9th in the country in the percentage of second chance opportunities that they score on. So on 8.1% of all missed field goals, the Friars score.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're top 10 there, which is a crazy stat. They're so good at it because not only do they get the offensive rebounds,
but they put it back.
Croswell's a magician with getting it back up there.
Croswell cleaners.
Yeah. I think that's where Devin Carter becomes a figure in this too. And heck, Clifton Moore was really good on the offensive glass last game. So just continuing that play, I think, is going to be huge.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to take a page out of the commentators from last game. This game, it can be really simple. You need to break it down to the basics and play your style of basketball, and you'll be rewarded for it. It's when you overcomplicate things that, that's when this gets a little bit hairy and a little out of hand. You got to play them straight up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's how you learn about your team and how you grow too. Obviously, you're going to play UConn again later this year. So I think you got to start out that way and you see how they handle it. If they can't match up, then you make the adjustments, but you give them the shot because these guys have been playing well enough to earn it. This is a very good team right now.
What is Ed Cooley's all-time mark against Dan Hurley?
I don't have that in front of me. I can look. He's 2-1 since UConn joined the Big East,
And I think
and
he
then
was
eight
7-1.
7. Well, no, I think there were 2 losses in there. When Dan Hurley was at URI. I don't think they had this in the game notes either. There were less stats in the game notes this week than I expected there to be. By the way, there was nothing on how well the Friars have done against teams that are ranked this highly.
It's the coaching rivalry no one wants to talk about.
Yeah, so I want to see how that goes. I'm so excited for this one. And the Friar, we talked about it before the show. The Friars come into this kind of with house money.
Yeah,
And you're 4-0 for the first time ever.
I mean,
if you lose to the number 4 team in the country, nobody's going to bat an eye.
We talked about, this DePaul game as potentially being a trap game. And what's been, overshadowed is that the Friars are off to a 4-0 start in conference play for the first time in school history. You're going into this UConn game quite literally with house money because you've never been in a position before to enter game 5 of conference play undefeated. And I think, because of that advantage, Friars should come into this and play real loose. We compared this, Matt, to the last game of the season against Villanova last year when the Friars had already won and, stowed away the trophy for the Big East regular season title. You go into that Villanova game and it's like, you win, great, you have bragging rights. You lose, okay, whatever. It happens.
Yeah. And the other thing here is it does feel like that, but they have an opportunity they didn't have in that game, which is nice here. It's just you win this one, you send a message that as of right now, it is a 3-horse race for the best team in the Big East.
Yeah.
Because you'd have a 5-0 Providence team that's defeated UConn. UConn will have 2 losses already. Xavier would presumably still be undefeated. I don't think they play tomorrow night. I think they're off right now.
Yeah.
So, Xavier's off. So Xavier does not play until Saturday, which, by the way, is a game at Villanova, which becomes very, very interesting for the state of that Villanova program after having lost at home to Marquette. But then it's the Friars are number 1 in the standings in the Big East if they win this game, and they will be through Saturday at a minimum because they'll be the only team with 5 wins. And UConn will be there with 2 losses. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way. A 2-game lead with 13 to play, or 14 to play, 15, wherever we're at here.
16?
15 to play.
Oh, no, after the
15
game, 15.
after this.
Yeah.
2-game lead with 15 games to play and a matchup between the 2 teams left. Doesn't mean a ton, but you'd rather have it than not have it.
I mean, what do we say? All non-conference, Matt, is 12 Big East wins and you're in, and I'd say getting number 5 is a big brick onto that wall.
Yep, and it's to look ahead a tiny bit. The home game at the end of the week is against the St. John's team that has not played very well and still does not have a win away from it. Does not have a win in a road game. They have 1 win away from home on a neutral site against Florida State, a bad Florida State team.
Yeah,
but you got a chance here. If you take care of what you do there, to start off 6-0, and you're halfway to kind of the target to make sure you're in the dance already by the end of this week, in early January, and then all right, obviously you don't want to coast if you're that good. Our sights become a little bit higher than just making the dance.
Yeah,
but then your floor becomes making the dance, and I think we'd all feel very, very good about that, given where this program has been in its history.
Yeah, I agree. You look at the past couple of seasons, you go from, you're relieved to receive a bid to now that should be the expectation. And the expectation should be beyond that, getting past the first game, the first weekend, really. But that's getting way ahead of ourselves here because
we'll remember that the Friars have not won back-to-back tournament games in the tournament in back-to-back years since 72 and 73. So they're looking to do something they have not done in 40 years here, if they're able to do it. So that's where I will take what I get with this team. It feels nice to be like, okay, we should be a ranked team, and to kind of feel that way for what should be the 3rd time in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
If you win this one, you should be ranked. They were ranked last year, and you go back. They never got ranked at the end of 2020, right?
No, I think they were 27th receiving votes after that 6-game win streak. And I think there was a point in time where they weren't receiving votes, but were certainly in the conversation in the 2020-2021 season before the wheels fell off.
Yeah. Well, they fell off kind of early in that one too, with the neutral losses right off the bat at the Maui Invitational in
Yeah,
Asheville.
that was a very quick blip of, hey, this team returns David Duke, Nate Watson, and AJ Reeves, and then the wheels fell off.
Yeah, that was they looked good the opener too.
Yeah.
Against I believe that was a Fairfield team that had Supreme Cook.
Yeah.
One of my favorite names, basketball, right there.
Yeah, Supreme Cook.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. All right, I don't know how much else we have to talk about in this. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, I'm very excited for this game. I think, having UConn come in, hungry after a loss, just adds to this rivalry, especially now that they're fourth in the country too. I think this game has a lot riding on it for both teams, beyond the bragging rights of UConn hates Providence, Providence hates UConn.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge one. So this will be the first game at this building at the AMP between Providence and UConn since January 31st, 2013. We have seen the Friars knock off some top-ranked UConn teams before. They actually beat number 4 UConn on the road back in 2004, the one that won by 10 points. So I think looking to repeat a little bit of that magic. They've done this against UConn before. They've spoiled UConn's party a number of times here. They did it last year at UConn. UConn was ranked number 20 in that one. So we will see what the Friars are able to do Wednesday night. This one will be the 8:30 tip, the late one in the Big East double header there. Tomorrow night, it'll probably tip a little bit later. Probably tip 8:40 if I had to guess.
Yeah.
This one will be on Fox Sports 1. So make sure you got your dials turned to that one. They're going to have Dave Sims and Donnie Marshall on the broadcast.
Oh, man.
Is Phantom done broadcasting for Fox Sports 1?
I haven't heard so. Unless there's something behind the scenes otherwise, but I didn't.
A little surprised. Have we gotten him for a game this year?
I think the opener, Ryder.
Have we gotten him for one since? I don't think we have.
I do not know.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. I'm now curious. If anybody does know and listens and wants to let us know, then please do.
I will say I do not envy anyone who will be watching at home having to listen to Donnie Marshall talk about UConn. Because for anyone that doesn't know Donnie Marshall, he is the biggest UConn fan on the planet. He played there. Mm-hmm. And every time he calls a UConn game, they do no wrong in his eyes. I thought he was going to cry after that Xavier loss. Or that Xavier win, rather.
Yeah, it was something. Friars coming into this one at 12-3 on the season, 4-0 in the Big East. The Huskies come in 14-1, 3-1 in the Big East, and 4th in the AP poll. Just to round this out, their leading scorers, Adama Snogo, 17.8 points a game. Jordan Hawkins was another name we didn't mention in here. He's their best three-point shooter. He averages 14.6 points a game. Their assist leader is Tristan Newton in the backcourt. He transferred in from East Carolina. Oh, sorry, he's not. Andre Jackson's their assist leader with 5.1. But Tristan Newton as a guard, kind of the backcourt, is their assist leader there with 4.6. Those are the biggest names to know for UConn. We'll have some kind of coverage for you after this one. I don't know exactly when we're going to do our post-game show. I'll be on the Road to the Garden podcast Wednesday night. After this one, maybe, you'll be at the game, so you won't be on.
I'll be on the road home after the game.
Yes. So if you want immediate post-game coverage, come join me on Road to the Garden with Tommy Godin, and we'll give you some instant post-game on this, plus the other games in the Big East, and look ahead at the weekend slate. That's going to do it for us on this one. Welcome to 2023 show, and thanks everybody for listening. Make sure you go subscribe wherever it is you're listening to this, and we'll see you next time.
Go Friars.